Good morning, everybody. Sorry, I've been under the weather this week, so I haven't been posting. But I do want to get into this, especially for beginners, really for anybody. And I know I've done a video on this before. I know that I've worked with clients on this topic before, and you guys have heard me say that, so these videos have popped up a little bit. But we're going to go into how this applies to chords, bar chords, and simple melodies and even exercises. So I'm going in cold, haven't played, haven't warmed up at all. Which I think for this is going to be a good representation of sort of these exercises. But when we're really trying to find the absolute easiest way, that's how we want to think of the guitar is finding the easiest way to play something, right? And the most relaxed, and ultimately what takes the least amount of pressure and musculature. And that's going to make us efficient and then fast. If, speed's really where we want to go. But just being a good player, an agile player, and so on. So how we can really find that. And I do this with my beginner students because it's very, very common to over squeeze. And I know that I use this example a lot, but we want to grab that guitar neck, we want to squeeze it like this, like handlebars, hammer, baseball bat, whatever it is, that makes more sense. That's just how we grip things. This is a little bit different. That sort of pinching motion. When I talk to my student, when I do like a younger kid group guitar classes, that's what they want to do. And I sort of have them just say, I sort of say, make a shark, and then make that shark have teeth, right? And that's how you think about playing a guitar. Or I'll have them put their other hand out and pinch, right? And see, and I'll say something like, act like it's your younger brother, or someone that annoys you, and you really want you want it to hurt, right? That pinch, you don't want it to not hurt. If you do that, it won't hurt. If you sort of do this weird thing, which we do with the guitar, we put our palm back here, that definitely doesn't help. That doesn't get the fingers to do. If I do this exercise, nice and easy, if I put my palm back here and I'm sort of gripping the guitar neck, this really doesn't work. Our fingers are doing all this crazy work. And don't forget that your thumb is incredibly strong. So really, when it comes to a bulk of the muscle, that's taking up a lot of it. And that push that your fingers are pushing against, that's actually what's going to make the guitar easier. So you don't have to use a lot of strength. We're going to build strength with our fingers, but that's going to turn into speed and dexterity. So you don't have to squeeze so hard. Your thumb is sort of taking up all the work. So that's sort of the position. What we want to get used to is this idea of that being just enough pressure. Okay, that's also very uncomfortable. This has a lot of sensory pressure for it. We can feel it. I don't know if I'm using the right words. We can really feel it. We can adapt to it. This feels like we're losing the control a little bit, right? There's not as much grip to it. If we do this, see, we want to squeeze because we can really feel that squeeze. We can feel that push, but that just being enough. Just as soon as you get the note from the click, is perfect. And that, when you're doing your warm-ups, is all you want to be pressing down. Now, the reason being, to really go into it, is if I'm just going from here, a nice light right there, right? If I'm going light to the next note, to the next note, to the next note, there's very few, it's almost like drawing a straight line, okay? If I'm pressing down really hard, I then have to go from pressing down really hard all the way to not pressing down that hard, to lifting up, to pressing my finger on the next string, to then pressing down really hard. We're creating all of this movement, right? All of this motion, when all we need to do is just get to that next note. Just draw that straight line by just making everything easy. Right, that's how it really relates to speed. Okay, that can be really uncomfortable. So I do have students that I'll try to get them to ride that buzz a little bit, right? Just to get used to where that is, because this is a lot closer than a lot of my students who have been playing for a little while, mind you, and squeeze way too hard. This ends up being much closer to where they want to be pressure-wise. Now, this goes into open chords. A lot of times we make open chords, especially bar chords when we get into it, but open chords much more difficult than they have to be. So if I just have a G, oh my gosh, is my guitar even in tune? The only reason that this is somewhat in tune is because I did have a gig last night, but I just pulled it out of the case. So if I have a G, right, if I play each one of those notes singly, right, beautiful, doesn't take much. Next note, cool. Last note, awesome. Put them together. All of a sudden, we want to oversqueeze just because it's three notes at the same time. But we don't need to oversqueeze any one of those notes to get the sound. So we still want to be free. Now that's the same thing. If I'm going to play through those open chords, I'm going to need to make that same straight line that we're talking about before, from going from note to note here, by not pressing down and making way too much work. Also, when you're pressing down, even when you're doing those smaller notes, is your muscles will start to tire out. We don't need to use large muscle groups to make this sound, the guitar. So you're adding, it's adding like a weighted vest to your playing and adding distance to a race. You know what I mean? So you're doing two different disservices at the same time. So if you really feel those out, cool. Awesome. Great. Cool. Nice and easy. Do it with a C. Cool. Perfect. Right. Nice and light. Nice and easy. And I want you guys to try that. And let me know sort of how that goes. Now, the last thing is the bar chord. Okay? And it's the same idea. Everything's nice and easy. However you want to do it. I usually will show my students that little trick when we're doing these. And then you just put it together. And don't worry so much about the pressure on the back. I do have a really great tutorial about like easier bar chords. But don't worry about all of that pressure on the back, right? Focus a little bit more on how easy these notes are, right? The upper notes in your bar chord. Nice and easy. Right, just lay that down. It'll get a little click. That's cool, right? Then add the pressure on the top. Cool. Everything's still nice and easy. If you play just that, don't even worry about the bottom strings. It should be a relatively easy chord, depending on where you are, you know, in your guitar playing. Mainly, can you stretch and press? But that shouldn't be too difficult, right? If you're at a certain level. Right, unless you're making it difficult by oversqueezing, right? And then let those bottom notes sort of click out. You can sort of feel them. All right, and then your fingers sort of doing an arch here, right? If I pull this up, ooh, that's sort of how my fingers forming around those strings. I'm not really pressing down much on the strings at these. Those fingers are sort of taking control. A little exaggerated. And that's the same if we move to here. You know, this finger is taking a bulk of the work. You know, that's how I do these major bar chords. I don't do them like this just because that is a whole lot of moving. This is tends to be a little bit easier for me, at least. But some people can't get their ring finger to bend in like that. But if that's how you're playing it, that's taking a bulk of the work. So you move your thumb a little bit more right behind that finger and let your first finger just stretch. And let everything be nice and easy. If you have the minor form, you know, starting on the A string, it's the same as up here. You know, we just move down, so all the principles apply. Then if you have a minor form up here, you know, we got a little bit more work for the first finger. And what I actually do for those minors is I'll go right for the fret and roll back just a little bit, right? And that'll just sort of set the bar a little bit more on the bone part of your first finger rather than the meaty part. So there's a lot in that lesson, you know, and really it's just about not overexerting, because like I said, you're creating a further distance with more weight on your back. So there's two reasons why that's really bad. Now the other thing to consider when you're doing all this is also your right hand. You know, we really want to drill in there. We also, I mean, it does sound like, I won't say it just sounds like, there are times where, you know, really hitting the strings is artistically what we're going for, you know. It doesn't happen quite as often as you may think, but that will happen. But we want to be able to, if we're going to do that, you know, if you're going to play that sort of blues sound where you're really drilling in, you know, that Stevie Ray Vaughan, like almost like Hendrix sound, if you're really like drilling into it, you want to be able to build on the foundations of going nice and light with this hand as well. So you're training the smaller muscle groups, and then the bigger ones and bigger ones and bigger ones and bigger ones sort of take over as we need them. And then you can always go back. If we're starting here, right, we're going to tire ourselves out, and then we don't have this foundation. So our dynamic range is also much smaller because we don't have this bottom to reach for. So the dynamic range is gone. But not only that, everything that we play is going to be like a little bit more bland just because we don't have the control that we would if we're training the smaller muscle groups. So same thing with here, same thing with this hand, is just how light can you make it? Can you let that pick sort of just roll over the strings and not go too far away, not drill in unless it has to. Strumming as well. How light can you make that? And then start adding a little bit more and a little bit more to it. You know, strumming's great. It's amazing how much more volume you can get from strumming lightly and just gripping the pick a little bit more heavy. You know, so the strumming thing is really interesting because you're going really light, and then to add a little bit more volume, you grip the pick a little bit more, right? And then you still, it's a lot of wrist, right? It's got a little bit of this doorknob turning and a little bit of this up and down, right? It's sort of like down and turn, up and turn, right? And it's nice and easy. The pick should be pretty light in your hands. To add volume, squeeze the pick a little bit more. Nothing else needs to change yet. You can add a little bit more of a flick, right? That's a little bit more here. Right, the last way to add volume is going to be really giving your elbow, and when you're giving your elbow in like that, coming down and still getting those turns, right? So your elbow is just adding to this. If I'm doing my kind of turning the doorknob and flexing down, the elbow just adds to it. So it's not supposed to be stiff here in the elbow doing the work. And that's going to be the same thing when you're starting the strum. It shouldn't be, right? That's also not really the way the pick works, right? If you're going down the strings and you're sort of holding the pick the same way, now the angle is much different there, you know? So you just want to kind of cater to those strings, get everything nice and easy. If you can sound good quietly, then you will be able to sound good playing louder. You know what I mean? If you can only play loud and you can't play soft yet, that just means that we're missing that foundation, and it's going to be difficult to sound good. So that's a lot. There's a lot in the lesson, but like I said, I was kind of gone for the week, so I wanted to give you guys a bunch of stuff to check out, and I will see you soon.